We stand is the wrong word. What was his drive? What was his contribution to this group?
Well, Neurath made two contributions, I think three. One was the political push, but the philosophical contributions were, in the first place, he strongly disagreed with Schlick about what was the bottom line in science. He thought that this talk about our inner experiences was a dreadful mistake, and that science always started with observations described in the language of physical objects. So it's not useful to say, I'm having an experience of a red thing. It might be useful to say the stoplight is red. One's a statement about my inner experience, and the other's a statement about a physical object in space and time. And it mattered because Neurath thought you could only build up science from these claims about physical objects and how they behaved in space and time.
They keep using the word science, and Thomas pointed out earlier that he rejected the whole notion of the idea of there being a philosophy. So philosophy didn't count anymore. It wasn't on his agenda.
Wasn't on his agenda.
Wasn't in his mind, as it were.
But nevertheless, he made two huge contributions to the philosophy of logical positivism. And the reason Schlick wanted to go back to experience was the nice thing about science is that it gives us a high degree of certainty. And if you begin to look for certainty, there's a natural progression to think, well, I could actually readily be mistaken about whether the stoplight was red. Perhaps I missaw it, perhaps the light was reflected in non-standard circumstances, etc. But you pull back and say, well, if I want some certain foundations for science, let's go back to something I can really be sure of. I have this red experience now. So it was one of the reasons for wanting to pull back into subjective experience as the basis for science was to try to find some basis that was certain. And Neurath thought that was absolutely mad, that you could never build science from those kinds of propositions. So you can't build quantum field theory from reports of red here now, which was the kind of experiential report.
When it was resonating around the place.
It grew out of Ayer went for 4 months to Vienna in 32-33. He came back and began to gather a group of discussants in Isaiah Berlin's rooms in All Souls. There was a core group of 7, a bit like the Vienna Circle, a core group of 7 that met weekly and discussed the ideas of essentially logical positivism, among other things. And as in Vienna, they all were progressive, left-wing. They tended to be anti-appeasement and were almost all of them involved in the Labour government and a kind of socialist-leaning activities after the war.
And to push on a bit...